Minister S.Iswaran, Ambassador Barbara Plinkert, and Ambassador Jaya Ratnam, who's joining us from Brussels, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, many of you who are present here today, and lots more who are joining this event virtually. My name is Deepika Shetty. I'm the press officer for the European Union in Singapore, and I very warmly welcome each of you to today's event celebrating the first anniversary of the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, which has heralded a new chapter in EU-Singapore trade and economic relations. This event is presented jointly by Singapore's Ministry of Trade and Industry and the European Union in Singapore, together with the support of Enterprise Singapore, the Singapore Business Federation, and the European Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. If you're posting updates on social media, which I'm sure many of you will through this event, may I please urge you to use the event hashtag USFTA. And now, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to invite on stage the European Union Ambassador to Singapore, Her Excellency Barbara Plinkert, to deliver the opening remarks. Ambassador, please.
Minister Iswaran, Minister for Communications and Information, and Minister in charge of Trade Relations. Excellency Jaya Ratnam, my friend and colleague Ambassador of Singapore to the EU. Mr. Ho Meng Kit, Chief Executive of the Singapore Business Federation. Mr. Pung Chong Boon, Chief Executive of Enterprise Singapore. Mr. Federico Donato, President of the European Chamber of Commerce. Excellencies, Ambassadors of the European Union member states, colleagues and friends of Singapore and the EU joining us today in person and virtually. We come together today to celebrate the first anniversary of the entry into force of the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. It is my honor and great pleasure to welcome you all. A special word of thanks to Minister Iswaran for gracing this occasion, and to all colleagues of the Ministry of Trade and Industry for the excellent collaboration in co-organizing this event. Unfortunately, European Commission Executive Vice President and Trade Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis could not join us in person, but I'm glad that he will be with us virtually with a video message. It seems like a very short while ago that together we celebrated the launch of our free trade agreement, the first one to have been concluded between the European Union and an ASEAN country 1 year ago. During this time, the world has changed quite dramatically. All our economies and societies have been impacted by the pandemic in an unprecedented manner. It has exposed our vulnerabilities, but it has also highlighted the benefits of cooperating at a global level to avoid disruptions in trade and to tackle common challenges. The EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement came at the right moment, setting an even more solid foundation for our cooperation and friendship, based on which we can jointly weather the storm and emerge from it stronger. As European Commission President von der Leyen said recently, when the coronavirus crisis hit us all, our free trade agreement was our anchor. There is growing consensus that the economic recovery from COVID-19 should be green and digital. And in this, as in many fields, the EU and Singapore are like-minded partners working towards a more sustainable future. Indeed, although our bilateral trade has been affected by trade disruptions caused by the pandemic, together we have worked hard to set in motion the concrete implementation of the FTA. Over the past months, good progress has been achieved in developing the institutional framework of this agreement. For example, the Trade and Sustainable Development Board met for the first time in November. It was an opportunity to highlight our commitment to working together in the fight against climate change and towards a resilient and sustainable post-pandemic economic recovery. Other achievements of the first year of implementing the FTA included setting up the Sanitary and Phytosanitary Committee and convening its first meeting with a view to securing the flow of food supplies and trade in agricultural and fisheries products between the EU and Singapore. Earlier this year, decisions on geographical indications were adopted to ensure the protection of key EU agri-food products in Singapore. Clearly, any agreement delivers only if it is properly implemented, and some key milestones have been set in the course of this year. But it's equally important that businesses are fully aware of the agreement and are able to utilize it. Therefore, we have also stepped up our outreach efforts to the European and Singapore business communities, together with our partners EuroCham and the Singapore Business Federation, to communicate the benefits of the FTA. This is done either through dedicated workshops on topics such as government procurement, but also through a new online portal called Access to Markets. It was launched in October by the European Commission and contains information about tariffs, customs, rules of origin, product rules and services, all tailored to the needs of small and medium-sized European and Singaporean firms that are interested in utilizing the FTA. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, our cooperation does not stop with the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. It is, in fact, provides a basis for more. So I look forward to signing later in today's program, on behalf of the EU, an agreement on cluster cooperation together with our partners from the Ministry of Trade and Industry and from Enterprise Singapore. This is part of our joint efforts to forge deeper connections between our companies, to further developing business relations and strategic partnerships. I look forward to exploring more ways to collaborate in advancing the green and digital transitions, which are even more important in today's unsettled world. This extends also to the bi-regional level, as our commitment to even closer cooperation was reaffirmed by the historic decision of the foreign ministers of ASEAN and the EU at their meeting only 2 days ago to elevate our long-standing relationship to a strategic partnership. Clearly, as close partners, Singapore, also in the context of ASEAN and the European Union, can make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Plinkert. Joining us from Brussels on this very special day is His Excellency Jaya Ratnam, Singapore's ambassador to the European Union. Ambassador Ratnam, I pass the floor to you for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Minister Iswaran, my dear colleague, Ambassador Barbara Plinkert, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning from Brussels. I'm delighted to be able to address you all today to commemorate the first anniversary of the implementation of the EU-Singapore FTA. As many in the room are aware, reaching this destination has been a long and rather winding, if scenic, route. Nonetheless, our timing has been serendipitous. I cannot agree more with my colleague, Ambassador Barbara Plinkert, when she says that the EU-Singapore FTA came at the right time and served, as European Commission President von der Leyen has put it, an anchor in the storm. The theme for today's event is a strong partnership for resilient and sustainable recovery. As we are all well aware, COVID-19 has severely disrupted our societies and economy. In its wake, the pandemic will restructure economies as well as the way countries and regions engage each other, whether for travel or for trade. We are all emerging from our shells, a little more insecure and inward looking. Restoring confidence and trust will be crucial in the coming year. Here's the EU and Singapore build on solid foundations. It is our growing ties that will help us weather the storm and emerge stronger, as Ambassador Plinkert has called for. The EU-Singapore FTA provides not just legal foundation, and I cannot understate the value of legal foundation given the premium degree of certainty provides in an age of uncertainty. More so, in an intangible manner, the long journey to reach the FTA has built a reservoir of trust and an understanding of each other as partners. We need to capitalize on this to move forward and deliver sooner rather than later, and in concrete terms, on the promise of our shared interests, particularly in the areas of sustainability and the digital agenda. In that regard, it is also important to recall the EU-Singapore FTA was always conceived both as an economic as well as a strategic platform. As a strategic platform, it was meant to bring our respective regions together. We should build on its success and develop new areas of cooperation between Singapore and the EU that can serve as fresh pathfinders for this larger purpose, and in doing so, reinforce the larger multilateral rule-based order that we are both firmly committed. too. The EU-ASEAN Business Council captured the larger value of the EU-Singapore FTA in the following way, and I quote, "As the first FTA between the EU and an ASEAN member state, the EU-Singapore FTA is both a pathfinder and a key point of reference for further trade deals between the EU and the region. In a deep and comprehensive nature, its deep and comprehensive nature makes the EU-Singapore FTA a world-leading deal, bringing the two regions closer together, boosting trade and investment, and helping to cement Singapore's position as both a regional hub and a leading investment destination for European business." As you may know, Singapore is currently coordinator for the ASEAN-EU relations. Just 2 days ago, we reached a historic milestone in region-to-region relations when the foreign ministers of ASEAN and the EU agreed to elevate the ASEAN-EU relations to a strategic partnership. In this regard, I share the views of my other colleague, Mr. Gunnar Wiegand, the Managing Director of the European External Action Service, when he described the move as representing a partnership between two stability anchors amidst the growing global uncertainties. The next step should be to move forward for an ambitious region-to-region FTA to give greater resonance to the strategic partnership, and in doing so, to send a clear message of our shared interest. In that regard, even as we look back with some satisfaction today at what we have achieved thus far, we have much work ahead of us. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Ratnam. As Ambassador Plinkert and Ambassador Ratnam have noted, the EU-US FTA sends a strong signal about EU and Singapore's shared commitment towards free and open trade. And as we mark the first anniversary, we are extremely delighted to have with us today Mr. S.Iswaran, Singapore's Minister for Communications and Information and Minister in charge of Trade Relations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming on stage Minister Iswaran to deliver the keynote speech. Minister, please.
His Excellency Valdis Dombrovskis, Executive Vice President of the European Commission for an Economy that Works for the People, Your Excellency Barbara Plinkert, EU Ambassador to Singapore, Excellencies, Ambassadors who are present here, my colleagues from MTI, Gabriel, Chongwon, Bikim, and many others, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and also Menkit and Federico representing the business community. Very good afternoon to our friends and colleagues who are here in Singapore, and also good morning to those who are joining us virtually from Europe. First, let me say it's my pleasure to join you today to commemorate the first anniversary of the entry into force of the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, EU-US FTA. This is an important milestone and one worth celebrating for several reasons. The EU-Singapore FTA is a symbol of our excellent bilateral relations, which have endured and thrived for decades. It was, and it remains, an important signal of our shared commitment to an open, rules-based multilateral trading system. The EU-Singapore FTA is a high-quality agreement which has brought many tangible benefits to enterprises in both the EU and Singapore. That our bilateral trade has held steady this year, despite severe economic and health challenges wrought by COVID-19, is also noteworthy, and the EU-Singapore FTA certainly helped to cushion the impact. We, the EU and Singapore, are like-minded partners with many common interests. Our economies are deeply intertwined, anchored by substantive trade, investment, and people-to-people ties. The EU is, as has been oft repeated, Singapore's fourth largest trading partner for goods, second largest trading partner for services, and also our largest foreign investor. We, in turn, Singapore, is the EU's largest ASEAN trading partner and third largest Asian investor. We host over 10,000 European companies, and many Europeans call Singapore home, adding to the vibrancy of our cosmopolitan society. Critically, the EU and Singapore have stayed the course of free trade despite economic and geopolitical turbulence. Based on its forecast in October, the WTO expects world merchandise trade to decline by 9.2% this year, due in large part to COVID-19. The merits of free trade and global integration are inevitably being called into question in some quarters and subject to populist pressure. Trade has become a politically fraught topic in many parts of the world, and there has been a revival of terms like decoupling and onshoring in the economic lexicon. The EU and Singapore have resisted these pressures, stemming from a deep and mutual conviction that free trade underpins global peace and prosperity. Global economic connectivity is essential if we are to realize our full potential. Only by working together are we able to benefit from each other's competitive advantages and create a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. Of late, some have emphasized the need for fair trade. That is neither a novel notion nor one on which there is any disagreement. Indeed, a rules-based and transparent multilateral trading system is the very foundation for fair trade. And there is much more that we can do and that we should press on with to better secure our supply chains and make them more resilient. Singapore is glad to have an abiding partner in the EU and other like-minded nations to resist nativist rhetoric and inward-looking policies. We must sustain a strong stance in favor of free trade and multilateralism at all major fora, like the WTO, the G20, ASEAN, and APEC. The stakes are high, and we will certainly be worse off if the world fragments into economic blocs. Crucially, we must also make every effort to ensure that the gains from free trade are equitably distributed in our societies. So it is a fundamental tenet that our FTAs must benefit our businesses and create opportunities for our people. The EU-US FTA is a prime example of a comprehensive and inclusive trade agreement, and its provisions are ambitious and wide-ranging. The EU and Singapore have undertaken some very substantive commitments in tariff elimination, rules of origin, and market access. There are also provisions on 21st century trade issues like intellectual property, renewable energy, and sustainable development. But an FTA remains a mere document unless our enterprises are able to take advantage of its provisions. So I strongly urge all our companies to study and fully utilize the agreement as a springboard to access new markets. The EU-US FTA will provide certainty and predictability for companies, especially the smaller ones, as they navigate the current global economic slowdown and seek out new growth opportunities. And we, of course, understand that a voluminous legal text like the EU-US FTA, which I recall was translated into many languages as well, can be difficult to navigate, especially for SMEs. And that is why our agencies like Enterprise Singapore, as well as our business and trade association partners, have put in place various tools and initiatives to make the FTA more accessible for companies. In that vein, the administrative arrangement that will be signed later this evening will create a framework for more regular engagement between our industry clusters. The administrative arrangement will facilitate information exchanges and joint exploration of business opportunities in areas such as manufacturing, medtech, food, lifestyle, and consumer products, as well as sustainable urban solutions. These are growth areas that will tap on the complementary strengths of our companies. Looking ahead, EU-Singapore cooperation must look to the future and explore new frontiers. One area where I believe there is much untapped potential is in the digital economy. The ASEAN digital economy is expanding at an exponential rate, and it is the fastest growing internet market in the world, with more than 125,000 new internet users every day by some estimates. This will add an estimated $1 trillion to regional GDP over the next 10 years. But the potential of our digital economies is not fully realized because traditional trade rules and policies are less suited for the digital or digitally enabled transactions of the 21st century. That is why Singapore is pioneering a network of digital economy agreements, or DEAs, with like-minded international partners. These DEAs will facilitate seamless end-to-end digital trade, covering areas such as cross-border data flows, use of corporate ID across jurisdictions, and electronic payments. We have signed digital economy agreements with New Zealand, Chile, Australia, and are in advanced discussions with the Republic of Korea. We are also in dialogue with other partners, including the EU and EU member states, to explore various modalities of digital agreements and initiatives. In addition, Singapore, Australia, and Japan are leading discussions at the WTO on the Joint Statement Initiative on e-commerce. This Joint Statement Initiative will establish baseline multilateral rules on global digital trade, serving as a bulwark against digital fragmentation. There is strong global interest in this Joint Statement Initiative. More than 80 WTO members, including the EU, US, and China, have come on board, and we are all committed to achieving substantial progress by the 12th WTO Ministerial Conference next year. We look forward to securing a high standard and commercially meaningful outcome. So to conclude, first, despite economic and geopolitical challenges, like-minded partners like the EU and Singapore have upheld and championed the open and rules-based order that has underpinned global prosperity for many decades. In that regard, I am confident that the EU and Singapore continue to build on our strong partnership for a resilient and sustainable recovery from COVID-19. Also, although the EU-Singapore FTA is only 1 year old, it has made a promising start with many companies already taking advantage of the FTA, and I believe there are many more to come. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to our friends and partners in the EU and Singapore who continue to advocate an ever closer partnership, and our officials on both sides who have been working assiduously to ensure the smooth implementation of the FTA. Thank you all once again for joining us today. We may not all be able to gather physically, but I'm glad that we have come together in spirit through this hybrid event to sustain the positive momentum in our bilateral ties. And I look forward to having a good conversation with all of you. Thank you for inviting me.
Much, Minister Iswaran. And in keeping with the nature of a hybrid event that Minister just mentioned, our next message arrives from Brussels. Our next keynote speech is by Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis, European Commission Executive Vice President for an Economy that Works for People.
Dear Minister Iswaran, dear colleagues, it is a great honor to celebrate the first anniversary of EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. When this dynamic deal entered into force 12 months ago, it represented an important milestone in our economic and political relationship. Many people worked hard for this trade agreement to become a reality, and I want to recognize in particular the efforts of Minister Iswaran and Ambassadors Ratnam and Plinkert. Of course, we would have hoped for an easier first 12 months. This time last year, nobody knew that 2020 would be the year of the coronavirus. All regions in the world have suffered from the pandemic, but we can see light at the end of the tunnel. I want to recognize the very decisive and impressive way that Singapore has handled the COVID-19 pandemic. Europe has been badly affected, but we made and will continue to make every effort to protect our citizens and bring back growth to our economies. Of course, trade has a very important role to play in this respect. Going forward, we need more trade, not less. Therefore, as we plan our recoveries, we must build on our trade agreement to help support companies, farmers and workers, and to benefit consumers on both sides. The agreement provides a very strong foundation for growth, competitiveness, and job creation. This is particularly important for our SMEs. Singapore is the EU's largest trading partner in the ASEAN region and our 16th largest partner in goods trade overall. It is a major destination for European investment in Asia. More than 10,000 EU companies have a base in Singapore. Moreover, Singapore is the third largest Asian investor in Europe. These are all very encouraging numbers with great potential for further growth. In this respect, I am very pleased that today we will sign an administrative arrangement on cluster cooperation between us. This will lead to many practical initiatives to help our business communities take advantage of the opportunities offered by the agreement. The EU-Singapore agreement is also an important milestone towards deeper trade and investment relationships between our regions. We should continue the necessary work to bring us closer to an EU-ASEAN trade agreement. I want to recognize the progress made on our strategic partnership at the 23rd EU-ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting hosted by Singapore on 1st of December. Of course, our relationship is about much more than just economic progress. It is fundamentally a union of two like-minded partners. What the world needs now is a sustainable economic recovery, and Europe and Singapore can help to lead the way. We must work together bilaterally and with our global partners to support a strong, fair, and inclusive economic recovery, with a particular focus on greening the economy and embracing digitalization. Accordingly, we should invest even more effort into the reform of the World Trade Organization. Without the stability and predictability of the fit-for-purpose multilateral rulebook, trade cannot thrive. This will make the recovery we are hoping for more difficult. So we should update and enhance the core functions of the WTO to support post-COVID economic recovery, but also to make a stronger contribution to achieving global targets like Sustainable Development Goals. We also need trade rules fit for the digital age. We are working together in the WTO e-commerce negotiations. In this context, I welcome the initiative by Singapore to deepen our relationship, in particular in digital area. I appreciate that Singapore does not see this proposal as a single undertaking, but rather as part of its ongoing partnership with the EU. The Commission will look at this proposal in the context of our ongoing trade policy review, the EU's global digital cooperation strategy, and the WTO e-commerce negotiations. I'm confident that we should be able to identify areas of mutual interest for cooperation. I would also like to congratulate Singapore and its partners on the recent Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement between 15 Asia-Pacific nations. The EU welcomes any agreement that contributes to market integration and improving trade flows. We also hope this agreement will generate widespread support for improving the rules-based trading system. But today is about EU and Singapore. I want to emphasize the fact that our free trade agreement is a real success story, and we have the potential to do much more. Let us pledge to work even closer together to build on this strong foundation. Let us find new and innovative ways to support our companies and our people. Let us work together at global level to support positive and lasting change. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you all in person in 2021.
As we heard from Commissioner Dombrovskis, today also marks the beginning of a new phase in the cooperation between the EU and Singapore, a phase that focuses on supporting business exchanges, laying the ground for a resilient and sustainable recovery. We have come to the moment to hear more about clusters cooperation and the agreement that the European Commission, Singapore's Ministry of Trade and Industry, and Enterprise Singapore will sign shortly. This agreement is a practical instrument to help our business community take advantage of the many opportunities offered by the US FTA. To tell us more about clusters cooperation, we have for you the special message by Slavomir Tokarski, Director for Industrial Policy and Innovation at the European Commission.
Distinguished Minister, Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for me to address this event that marks the first anniversary of the signature of our free trade agreement. I am also very pleased that today, on this occasion, we can sign an administrative arrangement on cluster cooperation between Singapore and the European Union. And I would like to thank our counterparts in the Singaporean Ministry of Trade and Industry and in Enterprise Singapore. We appreciate your cooperative spirit that you demonstrated while we are jointly developing the arrangement. I am convinced that the cooperation that we shall undertake together will help us to make the best of the opportunities created by our free trade agreement, and that it will significantly boost trade, investment, and business collaboration between our economies. But before I expound on what we plan to do together, let me tell you briefly how clusters can benefit our cooperation agenda. In Europe, we have around 3,000 clusters. They account for around 62 million jobs that represent almost 24% of total employment. The positive economic impact of clusters is well documented. They nurture growth and quality jobs. Companies that are located in clusters are more innovative, create more and better jobs, conduct more market research, and register more international trademarks and patents than businesses operating alone. Clusters are also very effective vehicles for internationalization. They help their member companies to enter international markets, join global value chains, and establish cooperation in third countries. And that is why we want Singaporean and European clusters cooperate and do business together. The arrangement that we sign today will provide a momentum and a framework for this to happen. The European Commission has so far such arrangements only with 4 countries, the US, Taiwan, South Korea, and Canada. So I'm very pleased that Singapore is our next partner to work with. So what shall we do under this new framework? First, we shall facilitate contacts and partnering between cluster organizations and cluster firms in our respective countries. One of the major barriers for exporting, especially for small and medium-sized companies, is identifying right business partners. We shall look for and jointly develop opportunities to connect cluster and businesses. For example, we plan to organize international cluster missions in Singapore and in Europe, offering matchmaking opportunities in strategic areas and sectors. The first such cluster matchmaking event can already take place in 2021, when travel becomes possible again. Second, we shall also facilitate the engagement of clusters in our initiatives and programs. For example, Singaporean clusters will be able to register and seek partners through the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. This platform already has more than 1,300 registered clusters that are eager to matchmake. Third, as public administration and agencies, we also want to learn from each other in order to strengthen our support services for clusters. We shall exchange best practices, discuss our initiatives and instruments that we use to help clusters to grow and to connect with each other. Cluster cooperation is specifically relevant for our small and medium-sized enterprises, for whom going international on their own is often very cumbersome. They can benefit from specialized support from cluster organizations. This includes shared intelligence on third markets, organization of visits, partnering and matchmaking missions, trust-based collaboration, and joint actions with other partners located in their clusters. The other great advantage of cluster cooperation is its ability to go beyond simple trade and facilitate long-term strategic cooperation. Clusters are naturally good in promoting innovation, research and development, and higher value added. Finally, I also believe that cluster collaboration will help our companies to address the most recent challenges ushered by the pandemic. Many companies want to diversify and make their global supply and value chains more resilient. They seek to take rational positions in risk exposure at overseas markets. They need to interact with business partners and clients through digital channels. Working together through clusters can help our companies to successfully achieve these objectives. I very much look forward to work with our Singaporean partners, turning this administrative arrangement into real actions for the benefit of our companies and societies. And I trust that our work together will greatly help us to harvest the opportunities created by our free trade agreement. Thank you very much for your attention.
Our thanks to Mr. Tokarski for this very clear message and inspiring vision of the work ahead for our clusters. To fully grasp what this arrangement will bring to the EU and Singapore, there is no better way than hearing it from clusters managers themselves. Next, I'd like to invite on stage Mr. Douglas Fu, President, Singapore Manufacturing Federation, to share his views with us. Mr. Fu, please.
Mr. S.Iswaran, Minister for Communications and Information and Minister in charge of Trade Relations of Singapore. Her Excellency Barbara Plinkert, European Union Ambassador to Singapore. His Excellency Jaya Ratnam, Ambassador of Singapore to European Union. His Excellency Valdis Dombrovskis, European Commission Executive Vice President for an Economy that Works for People. Mr. Gabriel Lim, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade Industry, Singapore. Mr. Peng Chong Boon, Chief Executive, Enterprise Singapore. Mr. Ho Ming Kiat, Chief Executive, Singapore Business Federation. Mr. Federico Donato, President, European Chamber of Commerce, Singapore. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to all in Singapore, and a good morning to all our EU friends and partners. Through technology, we are connected face-to-face, physically, as well as virtually. I'm humbled and honored to be invited to speak in celebration of the one-year anniversary of the European Union and the Singapore Free Trade Agreement, or the EU-FTA. Time has really flown by. It seems as if it was only yesterday that the business community was waiting with keen anticipation for the EU-FTA to come into force. Today, we celebrate the one-year anniversary. 2019 and 2020 have posed many challenges to the business community globally. First, dealing with the trade conflict between the United States and China. Then, reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is clearly evident that working together in collaboration, such as inking this FTA, brings much mutual benefit for all. FTAs allow for reciprocal trading and other benefits between parties and smoothen the sometimes bureaucratic processes for companies and businesses to enter into foreign markets, thereby allowing for business to focus really on their business and not on administrative or other auxiliary matters. However, it is well known that what is stated on paper usually differs in practice. Administrative forms, certification recognition, and licensing regulations can all differ, even within one country, as interpretation of words and translation of language differ from city to city and province to province. This is where trade associations and chambers, or TACs, like SBF, SMF, and other entities like clusters can play the critical role of bringing paper to reality. As individual economies worldwide seeking to recover from the effects of pandemic, and as we look forward enthusiastically for more of the EU-US FTA to come into force progressively as planned, the role of TACs can and should take on greater prominence. And this is why I welcome the signing the administrative agreement on cluster cooperation between Enterprise Singapore, the Singapore Ministry of Trade and Industry, and the European Commission, DG GROW. This is a very practical instrument that will support TACs and business exchanges supporting our economies in its recovery. But let me explain why entities like clusters or TACs are crucial players in reinforcing business opportunities. Since 1932, the SMF has been advocating the interests of the manufacturing community in Singapore. We are one of the oldest trade federations in Singapore, and our mission is to further the sector's growth and facilitate its competitiveness and sustainability. Currently, we have over 4,000 member companies comprising MNCs, SMEs, and affiliate members. These members represent a wide spectrum of industries in the manufacturing sector, such as building products and construction materials, energy and chemicals, food and beverage, life sciences, machinery and engineering, medical technology, electronics and electrical, and smart automation. To support companies in Singapore, SMF has been instrumental in hosting and organizing numerous business activities and a host of comprehensive and focused services. These activities provide companies with a platform to build networks beneficial for their businesses from within and outside the manufacturing community. Besides organizing various activities for our members, SMF believes that it is important to have a robust network with our overseas partners. SMF is proud that we have built connections and signed Memorandum of Understanding, MOUs, with leading business networks such as the trade associations and chambers of commerce worldwide across the entire globe. And the administrative arrangement that will now be signed by the EU and Singapore provides an even more structured framework for reinforcing the connections between EU and Singapore. Connections between EU and Singapore are already strong. One of the most valuable and important network that SMF has built connection with is the Enterprise Europe Network, EEN, an EU instrument that is also one of the largest and most influential business networks in the world. The Singapore Manufacturing Federation is honored to partner Enterprise Singapore, ESG, and Intellectual Property Intermediary Singapore, IPI Singapore, in a consortium to join and be part of the EEN family and to represent EEN in Singapore. The EEN Singapore Consortium is proud to record that since mid-2015, when EEN Singapore was established, SMF, together with our consortium partners, have led the EEN Singapore to excel and achieve far more than the collaborative targets provided by the EEN Global Headquarters. From January 2020 to September this year, in spite of COVID lockdowns in Singapore and EU countries for some months, the EEN Singapore Consortium has successfully enabled and leveraged on our network connections to nurture over 25 business partnerships covering technologies, innovations, products and services, covering a wide spectrum of industries and clusters in both outbound and inbound ventures. In addition, EEN Singapore has also built up a pipeline of over 2,500 Singapore SMEs who are interested to form partnerships with EU companies that the EEN Singapore Consortium partners will follow up to facilitate and nurture their successful partnerships with EU counterparts. I'm convinced that the EU-US FTA has contributed and will continue to contribute significantly to the success of EEN Singapore's efforts of hand-holding and nurturing business partnerships between Singapore and EU enterprises on a mutually beneficial win-win basis. Going forward, I strongly believe that the EU-Singapore FTA and the Clusters Administrative Agreement will present even more exciting business opportunities for enterprises in our respective countries to collaborate together at all levels and in all sectors. The chances of success are higher when we all work together. May we have many more years of successful Singapore-EU relations. Lastly, may I wish all of you present physically and virtually good health and good blessings. And let us celebrate many more years of anniversaries for the EU-US FTA. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your insights, Mr. Fu. Really appreciate that. Now from the EU side, we present to you a video from Mr. Marc de Colvener, co-founder of the Smart City Tech Cluster.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to share our views on collaboration between the European Union and Singapore clusters. I am Marc de Colvener, former chairman of Smart City Tech, The European Commission supports European strategic cluster partnerships, and Smart City Tech is one of those partnerships. The Alliance has 11 regional cluster organizations as members and represents about 2,500 companies and research institutions from all over Europe. I am a Belgian citizen working for DSP Valley, a digital technology cluster in Flanders and a founding member of Smart City Tech. The story I am bringing today is about how stakeholders from different EU regions join forces to make a difference on a global scale. We focus on the challenges of cities and how digital technology can enable solutions. Climate change, scarce natural resources, mobility or health are only a few of the challenges we all have in common. The Internet of Things, artificial intelligence or cloud computing can help us gather data and gain insights in the challenges we all face. Those technologies can enable solutions and steer policy to make it happen. Furthermore, we see technology converging. For example, monitoring water quality requires solutions that integrate digital and biotechnology. Functional clothing uses smart fibers. Urban agriculture is a high-tech business. To capture value in this multi-billion global business environment, the collaboration between disciplines, ecosystems, and regions is essential. We as cluster organizations play a crucial role. We connect people across boundaries and cultivate ideas into viable solutions. We consolidate solutions and make them available for reuse. We build ecosystems that carry innovation and global value creation forward. Singapore is the #1 smart city globally and a beachhead to a growing economy in Southeast Asia. Those are two of many reasons that make Singapore an essential partner for Smart City Tech. Over the last year, we built a fruitful collaboration with two Singaporean organizations, IPI, the Intellectual Property Intermediary, and Enterprise Singapore. We offer them access to the broad ecosystem of our EU cluster stakeholders. They will match our companies with Singaporean counterparts. The idea is simple. We select a theme, screen opportunities for collaboration, and start connecting experts. This approach works. For example, currently EU and Singapore SMEs are working on blockchain solutions, drone solutions, and functional clothing. This was the result of a joint EU-Singapore call which attracted 24 applications in 2019. This call was repeated in 2020 and attracted 87 consortia. We will work jointly with IPI and Enterprise Singapore to make the 2021 call an even bigger success. Our support is vital for promising startups, scale-ups, and SMEs working in a global smart city tech market. They lack resources to develop and implement an internationalization strategy. We pave the road for them and help them to build projects with Singaporean partners. Despite the current COVID-19 crisis, there is still room for international collaboration. This is why the signature of today's agreement between Singapore and the EU is so important to us. It will give us a framework to prepare for post-COVID-19 opportunities, such as improving and proactively using digital technology to connect to global business partners. For the next 2 years, our cluster will focus on sustainability. We will zoom into water stress, air quality, light and noise pollution, circular economy, energy, and well-being. We want to contribute to set up breeding grounds for EU-Singapore collaboration. The Singaporean Centre for Innovation in Energy, Ecolabs, reached out to our Danish Smart City Tech colleagues to explore a partnership. We will explore how to connect test facilities from PUB, Singapore's national water agency, with water stakeholders in Europe. Singaporean government agencies and the EC frequently publishes calls for proposals that can catalyze collaboration. We will actively develop synergy with activities set up under this Singapore-EU Free Trade Agreement, and thanks to the cluster's administrative arrangements. Cluster partnerships such as Smart City Tech play an instrumental role in international value creation. We must connect regional ecosystems around the globe to solve urban challenges and leverage technology capabilities. At Smart City Tech, we look forward to establishing more and more contacts and opportunities with our Singaporean counterparts. Thank you very much.
And now, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we will be witnessing the signing of the agreement that will unlock these multifaceted opportunities for business. It gives me great pleasure to invite now on stage the European Union Ambassador to Singapore, Her Excellency Barbara Plinkert, who will be joined by Mr. Gabriel Lim, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Mr. Pang Chong Boon, Chief Executive Officer of Enterprise Singapore. The signing of the agreement will be witnessed by Minister S.Iswaran. May I please invite all our guests up on stage for this really significant moment. Thank you. You would need to maintain your masks. May I please request our signatories to also stand up and hold the documents with the Minister for the photo opportunity that is happening now. Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you. The US FTA is a modern and comprehensive agreement and includes 16 chapters covering a wide range of issues such as market access for goods, customs, and trade facilitation, intellectual property, government procurement, services, and e-commerce. It is the first FTA in place between the EU and an ASEAN member state and was followed on 1st August 2020 by the entry into force of the EU-Vietnam FTA. We are now going to be moving to a panel discussion that will cover the benefits and opportunities present in the US FTA. For this segment, we will be using Pigeonhole Live. This is a simple, interactive mobile website where you can submit questions addressed to our speakers. Pigeonhole Live also allows you to vote on any questions that interest you. So this is when you reach out for your favorite tech device, your smartphone, your tablet, or your laptop. Just head on over to your internet browser and enter www.pigeonhole.at into the address bar. Next, key in our event passcode, which is EUSFTA. Once again, the event passcode is EUSFTA. Do keep your questions flowing in fast and furious through the panel discussion via Pigeonhole. We also have the QR code on your name badge. Questions with the highest number of votes stand a much better chance of being answered by the speakers. The topic of our discussion, 1 year on, opportunities in the US FTA and beyond. This panel is moderated by Ms. Elsa Chen, partner and chief economist at Allen and Gledhill. Panelists are Mr. Federico Donato, President, European Chamber of Commerce, Singapore, Mr. Ho Meng Kit, Chief Executive Officer, Singapore Business Federation, Mr. Christopher Ong, Senior Vice President and Managing Director, DHL Express, Singapore, Ms. Jocelyn Cheng, JR Group Holdings, Group Chief Executive Officer. And as we give the final touches to the movement we've seen on stage, I would now like to invite Ms. Elsa Chen to lead this panel discussion. May I also invite all our panelists up on stage. We are quite ready to welcome you. Thank you.
Hi, a very good evening to everyone here, all distinguished guests, Ambassador Plinkert, Ambassador Ratnam, and ladies and gentlemen, all of you who are here physically with us today and those who are attending virtually as well. It is my great honor to be moderating this panel discussion alongside these distinguished panelists. And maybe to kick off this panel discussion and to set the stage a little for some of the things that we might be talking about, I just wanted to pull together some of the themes that I've heard from the very excellent speeches that we have today, which is that if we look at the world trading environment a year ago, the one word that I would use to characterize it and that I keep hearing pop up is fragmentism. There was a genuine concern that the world trading order, the multilateral rules-based system, was at risk of breaking down. Economies, communities were starting to become inward-looking, and of course, suggestions that globalization is inequitable and a zero-sum game. But of course, then what we had at late 2019 was this EU-Singapore FTA coming into effect. And that injected a lot of optimism and hope in the multilateral, rules-based, fair and free trade system. And of course, hope and faith in the benefits of economic partnership. Now, if you look at the situation 1 year later, I think the economic disruption, the public health effects that we're seeing from COVID-19 is something that's completely unimaginable a year ago. But tying all of this together with the main topic that we're here today, which is to celebrate the first year anniversary of the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, the agreement and this economic partnership again highlights to me personally as an observer that this commitment to free and fair rules-based trade is going to be key to all our economies emerging from the economic and public health onslaught. And interestingly, another theme that I gathered from the speeches and how this is all intertwined with the topic of free trade is the opportunity that we can work jointly together in developing and forwarding some of the key themes that were already in progress before, which is the themes of digitalization, the themes of sustainability, strengthening, enhancing our supply chains and access to new markets. So on that note, I would like to kick off the panel discussion by posing the first question to all our panelists, which is that for the 1 year since the EU-US FTA came into effect, what are some of the benefits and opportunities that you have seen arise in the past year in EU-Singapore trade relations, for EU businesses, for Singapore business, and of course in your own sector as well? So perhaps to kick off our discussion, Federico, would you like to provide some comments?
Well, I think this 1 year of since the FTA was signed, I remember last year in a room very similar to this one, in a significantly different atmosphere. I remember before the signature and the entry into effect, I was speaking at some format similar to this one, and everybody's trying to do forecast of, okay, how much the trade will grow, how much it won't grow, to try to judge how relevant FTAs are, which was one of the biggest questions. And I was reading a study that impressed me quite a bit, because the study was saying that you design the FTA and the only thing you don't know is when the FTA is coming out, meaning which condition you find. And I think that study probably gave me the best suggestion ever, because then it came out in COVID, it came out in a year like this. So to try to judge whether an FTA is successful or not and to play with numbers, you cannot do it without bringing it down to the situation that you find. So if I would be telling you in March, when many countries were going in lockdown, then today we would be standing at a -4% since the trade of last year between the EU and Singapore, you probably would have said that I was a fool. Because you would have said that that couldn't be possible because everybody was shut down and that wouldn't be feasible. And I think that's probably the key takeaway number one. So at the end of the day, I don't know if that's the FTA that has helped that. For sure, it didn't probably work against it. That is a fact. And so I think that reaffirming that being open to trade is the only thing that two economies, at least one like Singapore, one like the EU, can do is paramount. And the numbers are here to prove that, especially from Singapore to Europe, if we wanted to put it down in the context here. So the takeaways I take home is this one, that at the end of the day is a year which, and I say it with a lot of respect with whoever is losing jobs or whoever is in industry that are suffering, but maybe I'm an optimist by nature, but it cannot be flagged only as a negative year because there are industry doing fantastically well as much as industry doing fantastically bad. So probably differently from other situations which led to recession or very grave economic situations, this one is extremely different. So you have people, and you look it in the whatever indicator you want to take, but it's very extreme in industry which are posting fantastic results, especially the one active in this part of the world, starting from the one who has the biggest presence in China.
Thank you, Federico. Mr. Ho, your observations for Singapore businesses?
Well, I first of all, on behalf of the Singapore business community, I think we would like to express our appreciation to the officials from both sides to have negotiated and concluded this free trade arrangement. We say our appreciation because I think in the implementation of the FTA, even in the 1 year, despite COVID-19, it has been broadly beneficial from the business community. Our export to EU has grown 12%, increased 12% in a very difficult environment. So kudos really go to officials for negotiating a very high standard agreement between, I think, two important trade and investment partners that not only covers tariff measures, but also important non-tariff barriers. I would say that the benefits currently is a function of many things, and one is a function of the ability, say, of the chamber, for example, to be able to outreach the knowledge of the agreement to our companies, particularly our SMEs. So we've done a couple of outreach sessions together with the European Chamber and other TACs to our companies, and we've also done advisory sessions. I think we need to do more. I believe that the more we do, especially our SMEs, they will understand how to configure their operations in order to make full use of the SME. I think we need to do that. And also, especially in this current situation whereby supply chains are dislocated, people want to build resilience into the supply chain and look for different markets. I think those facets of the FTA will become particularly useful for SME. So I think that is one effort I think we need to do in order to raise the benefit of the FTA. I would also say that we have our wish list of this particular agreement. I think Minister Iswaran talked about it, and certainly one wish list is the e-commerce area. Especially in this situation whereby we can't visit our market and do deals, we can only do digital. The importance of being able to connect digitally and trade and actually transact digitally is important. While the EU-Singapore FTA has an e-commerce chapter, I think it can be made a lot more progressive in order to support, I think, e-commerce type activities between companies from Singapore as well as EU. So certainly look forward to an upgrade of the agreement to bring in digital economy elements that will be useful for our company. So I think that is one wish list. The other wish list, I think, from our members is that, as you know, our companies, particularly, for example, in the manufacturing sector, our supply chains in the region, in ASEAN region, I think that they benefit, I think they can truly benefit from this EU-Singapore FTA if we can do regional accumulation of rules of origin to exploit the FTA. Right now, we can possibly only do it with Vietnam, which is the other. So we really look forward to the day whereby we can have more accumulation. And then I think we maximize the accumulation rules and maximize the network effect of having supply chain spread across ASEAN. I think that will be even more powerful. And I think it makes also running that kind of businesses for our companies in ASEAN a lot easier. So these are the two wish lists, but I'll say that in the main, I think we are very cheered by this, and it's something which we look forward to it gaining more robust benefits for our business community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ho. So I think Mr. Ho mentioned certain points, and also Federico as well, which interestingly leads back to this conversation I had with Chris before the event started, which is one on how some sectors are actually doing well, and Mr. Ho also mentioned like the disruption to supply chains, enhancing and strengthening it. So Chris, I think given your background, you're very well placed to speak about how your sector is doing, how the FTA plays into it, and of course where you see supply chains going.
Yeah. So thank you, Elsa. I think it's very true what Federico and Plinkert has mentioned. I think while this crisis has everybody has painted a very dreary picture, at least for the logistics industry, it's actually been a big boom. I think a lot of our logistics partners and ourselves have actually seen unprecedented volumes flowing through our networks during this very difficult period. And in fact, with sort of like the vaccines getting distributed just over the horizon, right? We expect actually 2021 to be a very strong year. But again, it's not just our sector. I think as the transporter of goods, right, across the world, we have seen a very strong increase in trade, and specifically in sectors like life sciences, even in electronics. Those in the manufacturing sectors that cover these areas have seen a very strong recovery. And for us as well, I mean, specifically on the EU, the Singapore EU lane, we've seen, very strong movements across, all parts of Europe, specifically in these sectors. Now, also on the return coming from Europe into Singapore, we've actually also seen quite a big pickup here. And in fact, as a result of that, after the FTA was signed last year, we actually started to reconfigure our network. And in fact, we've increased, shall we say, or we made certain changes such that, consignees here in Singapore, that means recipients of European goods, are able to actually receive the goods even earlier. Especially for manufacturers, we've introduced a new service called Pre-1030, which allows consignees in Singapore to receive their goods first thing in the morning when their logistic dock opens. Right, and that covers the whole of the island in Singapore. So we saw the demand for such services, and in fact, it's picked up significantly over the last 5 months since we've actually introduced the service. So clearly, different parts of the economy are definitely recovering at a different pace. I think the services economy, tourism, of course, is challenged, but clearly anything that deals with electronics, medical. And we've even started to see oil and gas, slowly start to pick up once again. Aviation used to be dead in the first couple of months, but with the domestic movements in Europe, in Asia starting to happen, the MRO companies in Singapore are also starting to see life coming back. So I know that there are a lot of European companies involved in that sector, and we're starting to see the need for the movement of the MRO products again. So again, it is a very uneven recovery, but I am optimistic that 2021 will actually be even better.
Thanks very much, Chris, for sharing your insights. Now turning to Jocelyn, I think coming from your perspective as a Singaporean entrepreneur, someone who's really built up your business in Singapore, where do you see the opportunities from the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement? And of course, Mr. Ho has talked about the wish list from Singapore businesses' perspective in terms of enhancing the Free Trade Agreement. So again, from your perspective as an entrepreneur, where do you see things going?
I think for me, because we are in food manufacturing in Singapore, it is so important that, after the signing of EU, of course, our customer over there gets to enjoy, the more competitive price. And of course, they are now looking at other food products that they can work with us. For example, because we are in also frozen, ready-to-eat meals, and these are all plant-based and all that. And I recently just received a call from EU is a very big online platform where they hope that we can have the presence in the EU. And they say that they can do the logistics and all everything through the e-commerce and all that for us. I think we are seeing a lot of opportunities as such, both ways. Of course, by also importation into Singapore. I never imagined that we can import organic milk from EU, but this is happening. And because of this EU FTA and all that, there is a lot of opportunities and for Singapore companies as well as the EU companies to come together and say what are the other things that we can trade. And of course, I've been also supplying to the EU for quite a while. And with this FTA coming in, definitely it has benefited our customer over there and also benefited us, because then now my customers over in EU is asking for more and more products that can we help them to ship together in the container. So as a SME, I think we benefited a lot from this. And I'm very lucky because since the last year's signing of this FTA, we also get in touch with SBF and all that, and they have been feeding us with a lot of information. And of course, with ESG, having a manager that is working with us closely, we always get the first-hand the knowledge about how to work on the country of origin, for example, on how to do the accumulation. So I think it is very helpful for not just the enterprises, but the government and also the policymakers to come together to say that, okay, we want to encourage trade, and what else does all these companies need? What are the essentials that will help them and benefit them? And I think hearing from our minister talking about digital, I quickly take out my phone and take notes. I think it's so important that because now digital also open up another new area of really market and business for us. I mean, just like I mentioned, the online platform that contacted us recently is really very exciting for us. And so we are looking at more trade and more, exchanges of not just product, but also services.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn. So in the meantime, we've gotten quite a number of questions from a very active audience. So I think one of the first questions, and a very popular one, is how can the EU-US FTA help businesses looking to expand overseas during the global pandemic, especially with the lockdowns that are happening currently? So maybe perhaps starting from Federico again, what are your observations in terms of maybe from a EuroCham perspective, whether you've heard any businesses coming to you, how can they better leverage the EU-US FTA to expand into Singapore, especially during this time?
Well, the chamber that I lead has taken quite a strong stance on, and then I come to the core. For the whole year, and many of the audience people know, we take a strong position on any thematic related to sustainability in Singapore and in Asia, and from technology coming from Europe. And that has been our main focus, especially given the nature that EuroCham has. And it paid quite well because we got an immense activity from we mainly serve people who are already here, mainly companies who are already here, and that has been extremely intense. We focus, of course, the team is very big, so we focus only on some specific ones, on nutrition, for example. Nutrition is a very big industry for Europe, and is becoming sustainable nutrition in particular a very big industry for Singapore, where there is a lot of shopping for technologies that we have. Could it be vertical farming, could be whatever you want to look at that Singapore is trying to do, especially for respecting the agenda of being sustainable 30% by 2030. I think that's one area where a lot of companies have a lot to do and a lot to offer from our side, from Europe. So leveraging on this theme, we got a lot of attention from the audience and a lot of business for what the chamber business can be defined. Because we even have companies spending much more and investing more in the activities of the chamber just because the theme was a theme that they were feeling important for them. In this year, being sustainability also the first time was part of the FTA agreement. So that's one thing for sure. On the digitalization, I think that with Menkit, with Douglas in the audience, we spent probably the last 2 years in many conversations at SBF saying on the problem that we have in digitalizing companies and how to make SME digitalize more and how to make companies digitalize more. In the last year, everybody digitalized at a speed that we never would have been able to achieve with any training, any formation, any investment, any try to event or push top down. And so that opened a lot of opportunities, and all the service line that services that industry also benefited a lot. So this too is what I worked the most during the year.
Okay. Thank you, Federico. I think that's actually something that's very interesting to hear from SBF's perspective as well. So Federico touched on the topic of sustainability, and of course that's something that features prominently in this EU-Singapore partnership. So from the SBF perspective, how is the topic of, you mentioned digitalization, so the other limb is the sustainability. How is that playing into, the conversations you're having with the SBF members?
Yeah.
What are some of the trends?
Maybe before I answer that question, I wanted to go back to the first question about how the EU-Singapore FTA is helping companies during COVID-19. I've got a practical sort of example. My belief is that the FTA per se does not help. It just enables business opportunity. So when we were looking at the EU-Singapore FTA, we found that actually there was an allowance of 1,250 tons whereby we can export Asian processed products into the EU. And we did not use it at all. So the quota was never used. Is it because the processed things that we can sell were so limited that it's of no value? It's curry fish balls, samosa. Is there a market for these items in the EU? I do not believe that there's no market. So we were exploring with Vietnamese ingredient providers, food manufacturers, and our own Singapore food manufacturers. Hey, so we told them, look, there is this opportunity. You can use the Singapore's EU's FTA to export to Europe. And we are beginning to do that. So I think that is a specific example whereby we are using the FTA as an enabler to link Vietnamese food company, Singapore food company to export to a market in the EU. So I think that's one example how, this becomes a facilitative agreement, actually creates a business opportunity. And I think it is marvelous. But I think there is still a problem. I think the problem is that we have to be able to connect to the markets in the EU. So my sense is this, the EU, because you have many member states, our businesses don't know the market enough. We know the ASEAN markets better because it's nearer, but we don't know the European markets enough. So I think if we can do more work in order to connect the markets in different clusters together with Singapore, I think we can enable even more business opportunities. So I leave this comment here because I think it is more than just the agreement. I think we need to do work in terms of connecting marketplaces, and we should do this not only a physical market, we should do it in the digital market. I think on the area of digitalization and sustainability, I think we have had important conversations between companies between EuroCham and us on this area, and I'm glad to see that, for example, in the EU-Singapore FTA, there are modalities to talk about this. It's not per se a legal text in the agreement, But it recognizes that in the future, these are areas that we can collaborate on, sustainable development. And I think the MOU that we are about to sign between SBF and EuroCham, I think puts sustainability as a very key area whereby European companies and Singapore companies can collaborate together.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ho. I think your observations really struck me because I think indeed what the FTA provides for and is the system, and we have the infrastructure in Singapore and Europe to be able to work together. But at the end of the day, it's still up for the businesses, together with the assistance of their respective chambers of commerce, the business federation, to really be identifying the specific opportunities that they can leverage on. So turning to you, Chris, I suppose on the hot topic of sustainability then, in terms of your sector, where do you see more areas for cooperation between Europe and Singapore in that aspect?
Yeah, I think, certainly the European companies are a lot more forward-thinking, right, when it comes to this whole topic of sustainability. And I think many companies, at least the large MNCs, have actually made commitments in terms of when they get to net neutral. For example, DPDHL, we've committed that by 2050, as a logistics company, we will actually get to net zero emissions. And that's a big ask when we're a large logistics player that flies lots of planes all around the world. I mean, we emit, as a logistics sector, 8% of the world's carbon emissions, right? But I think what has happened is more and more companies are actually seeking to fulfill their obligations when it comes to climate change. And so for companies in Singapore, and ourselves included, we've really gone on that path to look at how we can become more and more efficient. And so, for example, some of our facilities in Singapore are completely solar powered. We've started putting electric vehicles on the road. We've started with 4 actually. And in fact, if we can get the right vehicle sizes, and we've been talking to various parts of the Singapore government, we'd be changing the whole fleet, to a few hundred vehicles to electric ones. And I think for Singapore companies, more and more European-based companies are looking for partners or suppliers that can give them that assurance that they are actually taking steps to become more sustainable. In fact, recently I read an article that in Switzerland, there was a big debate about, I think that some responsible business initiative that may require companies based in Switzerland to have an obligation on both human rights as well as environmental, right? And so more and more companies are now being obligated to look at this whole sustainability topic. So I think, in terms of collaboration, lots of great technology. The vehicles that we use are all coming from Europe, in terms of EVs. The suppliers who provide us with the charging stations, again, lots of European companies. And so in that sense, I believe, Europe definitely has that head start when it comes to this whole topic of sustainability. But I would say that now, most recently, we've now had even American companies start to inquire about some of our carbon neutral products. So definitely, Europe has the head start, but I think, we need to now run a little faster to try and encourage more adoption, right, of these new technologies.
Thank you, Chris. So moving on to Jocelyn, I think the topic of sustainability, I think one key aspect of it is, of course, food sustainability, and coming from your sector, I think 2 questions here, slightly related. The first one is, how do you see sustainability playing into your particular, your business specifically, or your sector? And then secondly, we touched a little bit about how businesses will need to, with the systems in place, businesses will need to be the ones looking for opportunities. So what in a sense is your wish list in terms of what more can be done to help Singapore businesses like yourselves identify these opportunities in Europe? And maybe after that, we could have Federico give us your observations about what more can we do in Singapore to help European businesses understand what other opportunities there are here.
I think the first thing on sustainability, right? Coming from a food industry, we are always looking at new technology and new ways to save the food. If you look at some of the reports out there, 1/3 of our food are wasted every year. And all these are using a lot of energy to grow them, to feed them, and all that. So what we are doing here is also working with some of our suppliers who are the farmers and all that, to really put the food through the technology and then able to prolong the shelf life. I won't call it process, but we use like blast freezing and all that to keep the food fresh for like a good 12 months. I mean, in Europe, there's a lot of this kind of food, frozen food as well. It's like fresh frozen. So for that, we are going more into it, because then we are looking at all the plant-based protein as well, because we know that maybe down the road we're going to face with the problem of not enough real protein with the China market growing in meat eating, India growing in meat eating. We are really getting short of such supply. So therefore we are going into plant-based. We have started producing those and ship overseas. So coming back to the sustainability, of course, there's two areas of it. One is, of course, developing product that can help to contribute to the sustainability and environment, the ESG. And secondly is also working on the packaging part of it. So now we are also working with some of the companies to use more eco-friendly and biodegradable packaging, so that we can help the environment. And what is my wish list to EU? Of course, being a very small a company in a small country, we really hope that our food that is produced here, in fact, there's a lot of very good food that is being produced in Singapore and in Asia. Whether we can work with the EU companies, either not just through the export, but also can look at really collaboration and also building central kitchen in the country. So this is something that we are looking at. And of course, EU being so advanced in terms of the sustainability and all that, we want to see how or what other ingredients or packaging or the other services that we can tap on, and we can spinboard from there, instead of us going back to do all the R&D and research all over again. If we can partner some of these EU players. And of course, I buy a lot of machineries and equipments from EU. Actually, I buy not just production and packaging material. I also buy vending machines from the EU, because the other part of my business is food vending machines. So I think we really have a trust in the EU produced product, which we think that if there's more of this technology, we would love to see how can we partner them and collaborate with them, so that we can be ahead of in the delivering of the food, and also be ahead of the technology.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Federico, your remarks?
Well, in my opinion, the most important thing that happened in this debate in the last few years is that we moving out from, in my opinion, a failing argument of having to be sustainable per se, into a winning argument, which is we have to be sustainable because you can save money, make money, or create businesses, because otherwise we go nowhere. If we think to foster industries with public subsidies, I think that will go on for a while, and then we go nowhere. So I think there is one degree, which is how we can make money in these industries, and there are many examples, and I make the most blunt and really simple. Singapore, probably number one of the top problems in terms of carbon emission is related to the real estate and building market infrastructure. Every building like this one, I don't know if this one specifically, but you have an issue of efficiency. Now, tons of European technology from SMEs to MNC, but even many SMEs are extremely extremely strong into energy efficiency system and so on. Energy efficiency is not a concept which is vague. It's a concept that translates into the bill that you pay at the end of the month. So if you arrange by being more carbon friendly that you also spend less in what you have to do to sustain your building, that's a clear advantage for the construction, for the people, for everybody. So that's the more basic. But I think that really the contribution can come from many, as I said, from many different aspects. It can be the super big producer of solar and you name the type of technology. But if you look at the whole chain of value, for example, in plastic recycling, in many European countries, in Germany, Austria, to look at some, which were, by the way, part of an interesting agreement with the Ministry of Sustainability in Singapore just a couple of months ago, the ecosystem of companies that are involved in the recycling of plastic in many municipalities is made by very small SMEs. So I think that the challenge, if you're able to bring a lot of these, then you can have a clear advantage for Singapore and create an advantage for these people back then. I don't know if that's completely possible, but that's definitely an area where you can look at. So really, in my opinion, the paradigm is to look at this in a way that produce money for the community and for the company, that produce businesses, and also has a benefit for the society. Because otherwise, I think we are in a very old-fashioned discussion which will lead nowhere. We can subsidize for a while, but the while has to have a path. And so you have to look at the industry which are possible to be sustainable fast and ask them to be, being mindful that you have to act fast before otherwise the client will drive you out of the market. I'm in banking and a lot of clients investing today are not buying products which are companies investing into super polluting industries or who are not, if they are in super polluting industries, doing anything to move out of it. And if you don't move with the market, probably the market will move you out. So that's, I think, is something where you have to be extremely careful.
Okay. Thank you, Federico. So it sounds like, I think a common misperception is that the beneficiaries of FTAs are really going to be your big companies, those who are already, very involved in global trade. But I think as Federico said, there are actually a lot of opportunities for SMEs as well. From Jocelyn's perspective, she's benefited as an SME in terms of the trade that's been opened up. So Mr. Ho, from SBF perspective, I think one of the questions we have from the audience is, have you heard of any challenges from companies in utilizing the EU-Singapore FTA? And if there are indeed such challenges, how can perhaps SBF, how can the various agencies involved, what can they do to better help our Singapore SMEs overcome these challenges?
Well, it's certainly from the SME's point of view, there are challenges. One, as I said, is that first of all, they need to know that they can use FTA as a strategic business tool, in order to gain market share and to look at diversifying markets, and even as a business model. So that's one challenge, and it's not helped by the fact that the FTAs are they are legal documents, and it needs to be unpacked so that it's meaningful and useful to the companies, particularly small companies. So what we are trying to do, and together with ESG, for example, is try to unpack some of these and give them a toolkit to, whether it is tariff finders or guidebooks written in plain English to explain some of these infographics, information leaflets and things like that. I think we have to do that as well. And we are supplementing these with outreach seminars. We have done outreach seminars. I mentioned this before. There have been good response, and we are supplementing these seminars with one-to-one advisory. We in SBF, we've set up our FTA and education team since last year. So far, we've done already more than 100 advisory services, one-on-one, to companies. I think it's a mix of both SMEs and large companies. And these services are provided to the companies free. And I think the companies have found these services very useful. I think we are quite determined to, do more of this. Clearly, there is a demand, and if we can also get the private sector to do more of this advisory, I think it's much better than more hands to help our SMEs unpack and make use of FTA. So, but certainly it is, I would say, is a task that needs to be done. It's a challenge that needs to be surmounted in order to enable our SMEs to really benefit and exploit the benefits of the FTAs.
Thank you, Mr. Ho. So Chris, coming from the supply chain sector, have you heard anything from your customers about challenges, difficulties they have in utilizing the FTAs, and whether how from your perspective, your business perspective, what do you see to be the benefits of the FTA to supply chains in particular, and perhaps even areas that you have leveraged on the this particular FTA?
Yeah, I think, for us, I mean, of course, even before the FTA, we've been moving goods, between, Singapore and Europe consistently. I think what has happened is post the FTA, I think there was a lot more interest from our smaller customers. I mean, because of course, we serve a lot of MNCs, but I think, we started to see a lot more customers getting interested. I mean, who've never started to trade, outside of ASEAN, really start inquiring about trading with the US or EU. But the challenge, I think, for a lot of the SMEs, is what Plinkert had mentioned earlier, was they don't understand the market, in the EU. But now with all the electronic platforms that are available and selling online, I mean, look, necessity is the mother of invention. And when a lot of them were pressed to look for new opportunities, they had no choice but to go online. And we have started to see a lot of small companies really trying to access the European markets. And these are companies that perhaps have a very local branded product that they're trying to push out into different markets. And now again, because of internet platforms, right, the ability to really not have to be in a particular market to be able to address that market, we are actually starting to see quite a lot of that pick up. I think people realize that they have to find a way to grow their business. And so the digitalization has really helped more and more of these companies. Actually, for a start, some of them really just took advantage of the need for PPE. At one point, we were shipping tons of masks and gloves. These were just small traders, small SMEs that managed to secure the supply and really started sending them across to the EU, right? And we've now started to see another wave of that happening right now because of what's happening there. But I think once they've started and see that they can actually, start addressing these opportunities, I mean, it gets them to be a little bit more bold, right? To try different types of products as well. I mean, intrinsically, there are a lot of Singapore companies that are traders. They don't have that many that actually create IP or have their own brand. But I think, it's a start. And I think, the EU FTA, if nothing else, at least in the past 12 months, has raised awareness, right, of opportunities by the SME. I have not heard that they've had challenges, but again, it's really just starting, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks very much, Chris. So we're moving into the last few minutes of this panel discussion today. So I think just one observation from me personally in terms of opportunities for Singapore arising from these US FTA, it reminds me of a conversation that I actually had in January with some colleagues who were in EU who felt that given Singapore's reputation, there's this strong trust in Singapore's reputation and quality, that actually certain sectors, if they were to develop in Singapore, leveraging on the audit, quality specification, that might be an opportunity. And I think Mr. Ho also mentioned about working, for example, in the food sectors, working with Vietnamese businesses to try to leverage on the FTA with Singapore. So maybe addressing the last minute to all our panelists, as closing remarks, what are your hopes for the EU-US FTA, EU-Singapore trade relationship moving forward? So Mr. Ho, please.
Well, I'm happy to hear to witness the signing of the administrative arrangement of cluster collaboration. I think that is a very useful complement to the EU-Singapore FTA in that I think the cluster to cluster is more than just sort of deepening of cooperation in capability upgrading, but I think it's also connecting cluster marketplaces together. I think if we can do that, and if we can, the trade associations network is also brought in, then I think we can bring more of our SMEs into those clusters. Then I think you have a connection of the marketplace. I think that, to me, completes the EU FTA, which is an enabler. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ho. Yeah. Federico?
Well, I hope, as you touch a point that you didn't touch much before, on regulation and Singapore being a benchmark for the region, I think that's probably one of the most important parts. Europe is already a huge investor in Singapore. From the EU to Singapore, you never had a big trade tariff problem because tariffs were already low. You had a bigger problem that Menkit slightly mentioned at the beginning of non-tariff barrier, which was much more significant. Now you remove that, and Europe was not competing at par with other major countries who had already had an FTA. No matter that, we were already extremely big here, and so I think that's a base to be bigger and to be more relevant in the region. And the biggest hope, clearly, is to be hopeful that, as the minister said before, we can move forward with going bigger from the FTA, but maybe evolving into a digital agreement soon.
Thank you, Federico. Christopher?
Yeah, I think as just closing remarks, just to follow on what I just said about digitalization and for Singaporean companies. I think, very often we look inwards. A lot of them prefer to use the traditional means to get into new markets or just focus on markets they're familiar with within ASEAN. But I do see that with, whether it's the FTA and with all the effort that is being put in by the various, chambers to really drive, knowledge, I think, there is really great opportunity for Singaporean companies, especially the SMEs. And with digitalization, and I think this whole COVID has accelerated, e-commerce by decades. Just the opportunity now to be able to leverage and get into different markets on these platforms is immense. And so, all I would want to say is to encourage the SMEs or all the Singapore companies, right? Not to be afraid, but really leverage on the opportunities that are out there to leverage the, digital technology to really get into new markets.
Thank you, Christopher. And Jocelyn?
I'm looking forward to more collaboration with the EU companies. And also, of course, I'm very, very excited with the digitalization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn. So with that, we've come to the end of our panel discussion. Please join me in thanking our excellent panelists for all the insights that they've shared today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Huge thanks to our moderator, Ms. Elsa Chen, for steering such an insightful conversation covering so many issues. Thanks also to our panelists, Mr. Federico Donato, Mr. Ho, Mr. Christopher Ong, Ms. Justin Cheng. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we will witness in a few moments the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Singapore Business Federation and EuroCham Singapore. The SPF and EuroCham are entering into this MOU to deepen collaboration in the areas of sustainability, digitalization, internationalization, and corporate social responsibility. These are key areas of cooperation between the European Commission and the Singapore government, underpinning the country's trade and investment relations. SPF is the apex business chamber in Singapore, championing the interests of the business community in Singapore in trade, investment, and industrial relations. EuroCham is the trusted partner representing the common interests of the European business community in Singapore and ASEAN. This MOU covers partnership in the marketing and organization of initiatives related to sustainability, including sustainable employment, as well as driving digital adoption and building digital capabilities among companies. It includes cooperation in internationalization of the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, as well as corporate social responsibility through the industry-led SBF Foundation Compassion Fund for the business community to pool resources and collectively support employees in need. Indeed, this MOU reflects the synergies between Singapore and European businesses and the strong relationship between Singapore and the European Union. And in a few minutes, as soon as these tables are set, I will be inviting back on stage Mr. Ho Menkit, CEO of SBF, and Mr. Federico Donato, President of EuroCham. But just give us a couple more seconds. I will have a sign to tell you when both of you could come back up on stage. May I please invite Mr. Ho and Mr. Donato back up on stage. You would have to keep your masks on for the signing. May I please also request you to stand up for the photo op? Thank you. Thank you very much. A quick reminder that you should not leave the venue today without taking those water bottles home, and also the special supplement that has appeared in the Business Times that covers the many aspects of the EU-US FTA. We are really coming to the end of the event. On behalf of the European Union in Singapore, Singapore's Ministry of Trade and Industry, and our partners, Enterprise Singapore, the Singapore Business Federation, and EuroCham Singapore, please join me in thanking all our speakers, panelists, and moderators, and you, the audience, for making our first anniversary event such a success. I really hope you've enjoyed the stimulating conversations we've had today as much as I have. My name is Deepika Shetty. It has been an absolute honor to be your MC this evening. And do also send us your feedback using the QR code that you'd used earlier to send us the pigeonhole questions. I wish everyone a very pleasant evening. Thank you.